He will not be going to the United States anytime soon.
He will not be going to the United States. He will. We're waiting to hear more details, but the assumption is that he will stand trial on British soil for the crimes that he committed here, which is really what his legal team, what his supporters...
Sometime after midnight in a cramped London flat, Gary McKinnon was half asleep in a dressing gown, beer nearby, running a simple Perl script over a slow 56K internet line, scanning for blank passwords, and somehow getting in, straight into NASA and US military systems. A 56K line was a very slow internet connection that used a normal phone line. According to his Wikipedia timeline and a 2026 Cybernews interview, he wasn't a professional hacker, just a UFO-obsessed systems administrator following claims from the Disclosure Project until he saw files that didn't make sense. And that's when everything changed. What did he see in those files? And why did they attract so much attention from NASA and the government? The everyman who cracked NASA. He wasn't using advanced tools or some secret hacker setup, just a basic script quietly running through computers that should never have been exposed, and one by one, they kept opening. Gary McKinnon didn't start as some elite cybercriminal. He was born in 1966 in Scotland, around the Glasgow and Falkirk area, not far from Bonnybridge, a place that had built a reputation over the years for frequent UFO sightings. That kind of environment sticks with you, especially when you're already curious. As a kid, he was into computers early, the kind of person who'd spend hours figuring things out just because he could. Atari systems, basic programming, nothing flashy, just slow curiosity building over time. Eventually, that turns into a career, and he becomes a systems administrator, which simply means someone who manages and maintains computer systems for organizations. But computers weren't the only thing on his mind. According to reporting from Cybernews' Malicious Life podcast, he had a long-standing interest in UFOs and even joined the British UFO Research Association, a group focused on investigating sightings and unexplained aerial events. That interest wasn't casual. It was something he followed seriously. Then 2001 happens, and something shifts. Around that time, a project called the Disclosure Project started gaining attention, claiming that governments, especially in the United States, were hiding evidence of UFOs and advanced technology, including what they described as free energy systems. Free energy, in simple terms, is the idea of producing energy without fuel or cost, which sounds almost too good to be real. For Gary, this wasn't just another conspiracy theory floating around online. According to his own statements referenced in his Wikipedia profile, he genuinely believed there was something being hidden, and more importantly, he believed he could find it. So he decides to look for himself, not by breaking into buildings or doing anything physical, but by writing a simple Perl script. A script is just a small program that automates tasks, in this case, scanning networks to find computers that have no password protection at all. Think about that for a second. No password. On government systems. He runs this script over his internet connection from his girlfriend's aunt's flat in London. No special equipment, no encrypted network, not even a VPN, which is a tool used to hide your identity online. According to the American Alchemy podcast interview, he was literally sitting there in normal home conditions, connecting through that same slow dial-up line we talked about earlier. And surprisingly, it worked. Between February 2001 and March 2002, over about 13 months, he gained access to 97 different systems, according to the timeline documented on his Wikipedia page. These weren't random small networks either. We're talking about systems linked to the US Army, Navy, Air Force, and even NASA itself. At one point, he accessed networks connected to the National Security Agency at Fort Meade, which is one of the most sensitive intelligence sites in the United States. Let that sink in for a second. A guy sitting in a small London flat using basic tools is moving through some of the most secure networks in the world simply because the doors were left open, and he didn't exactly hide what he was doing. At times, he left messages behind on the systems he accessed. One of them, according to Wikipedia records of the case, read, "Your security is crap." Not subtle, not careful, just blunt. But here's where the story splits into two very different versions. From Gary's side, he said he wasn't trying to cause harm. According to a BBC report on his case, he described his actions as a kind of moral mission. He believed the public deserved to know if this hidden technology existed, especially if it could solve global problems like energy. From the US government's side, it looked completely different. Prosecutors described it as one of the biggest military computer hacks of all time. According to US claims documented in his Wikipedia case file, his actions caused around $700,000 in damages. They said he deleted critical files and shut down systems. One of the most serious accusations involved the US Army. Tensions were already high, and according to those same records, Gary's access allegedly led to a network outage that affected about 2,000 computers for roughly 24 hours. At the same time, the US Navy reported that important logs related to weapons and munitions were deleted, which temporarily disrupted operations across the Atlantic Fleet. That's not a small issue. That's military readiness being affected. And you can feel the tension building here, because on one side, you have this guy chasing what he believes is the truth, and on the other side, you have a government saying national security was at risk. However, somewhere in the middle of all this, you have a bigger question that's hard to ignore. How were these systems even accessible in the first place? Because the uncomfortable truth is this. According to multiple reports, including Cybernews coverage in 2026, Gary wasn't breaking through advanced defenses. In many cases, there were no defenses. Blank passwords, open networks, and basic vulnerabilities that should have been fixed long before. Think back for a second. Have you ever followed a random idea, just curiosity pulling you forward, and then suddenly you're deeper than you expected, and it's not small anymore? That's where Gary found himself. What started as curiosity turned into access, and access turned into something much bigger, something that caught the attention of authorities on both sides of the Atlantic. In March 2002, that door finally closed. According to his case timeline, officers from Scotland Yard arrested him, ending the hacking run that had quietly unfolded over more than a year. And from that moment, the story shifted from hidden networks to courtrooms, extradition battles, and a possible prison sentence that could have reached up to 70 years in the United States. But here's the part that keeps pulling people back into this story. Gary always insisted he wasn't looking for money, not looking to cause chaos, not even trying to prove he was a great hacker. He was looking for something specific, and according to his own claims, he found it. With systems still open and access still fresh in his mind, he started focusing on a particular set of files inside NASA, especially around a place referred to as Building 8. Because buried inside those folders, he said, there were images and records that didn't look human at all. And that's where things start to get even harder to explain. What did he see? The cigar that bedazzled him. The files started loading slowly, line by line, like the image didn't even want to reveal itself all at once. Inside NASA systems, Gary McKinnon had already moved past the obvious stuff. The logs, the directories, the standard files that looked like any other network. What he was looking for now was very specific, and it came from someone else's claim. Her name was Donna Hare, a former contractor who, according to her testimony, referenced in American Alchemy and other UFO research archives, had worked with photographic systems at Johnson Space Center. She had said something that stuck with Gary, that there were two sets of images inside NASA systems, one processed and cleaned for public release, and another raw version that sometimes showed things that weren't meant to be seen. That idea alone was enough to send him digging deeper. He follows the trail into what's described as Building 8 directories, which lines up with where photographic processing work was believed to happen. And eventually, he finds it. Two types of folders. One labeled in a way that suggested normal, cleaned images, and another that looked like it held the original data. And that's where things shifted, because now he wasn't just guessing anymore. He was looking. The connection is painfully slow, still running through that same 56K dial-up line, meaning every image takes time to load, sometimes minutes. There's no instant preview, no quick scrolling. It's a waiting game. And then one file starts to come through. At first, it's just fragments, pixels, building piece by piece. According to Gary's own account, shared in interviews like the American Alchemy podcast and summarized in his Wikipedia profile, he remembers staring at the screen as the image slowly formed, realizing it wasn't just space or Earth or anything familiar. He described it as a large, silvery object shaped like a cigar, floating above what looked like the northern hemisphere of Earth. Not a plane or a satellite in the usual sense. Something else. He noticed there were no visible seams, no joints, no rivets, nothing that looked like it had been assembled in the way human machines usually are. The surface appeared smooth, almost continuous, and on either side of it, there were dome-like shapes, what he later described as geodesic spheres, rounded structures made from interconnected shapes forming a kind of dome. That detail mattered because it didn't match anything in known aerospace design. And here's the part that hits hard. He didn't take a screenshot, not because he didn't want to, but because the image was still loading. Capturing it too early would have meant saving something incomplete. So he waited, watching it come together. According to his own words quoted in interviews, at one point, he even thought, "That's a planet," before noticing a sharp, straight, silvery line cutting across it. That's when it clicked. This wasn't a glitch. It felt real. And then, just as it was coming into full view, his mouse started moving. It was clear someone else was controlling it. The system had detected him, and access was taken over remotely. Within moments, the connection dropped. Just like that, it was gone. No file, no proof, only memory. Here's where it gets even more interesting. The description he gave later started to echo modern UAP reports where US Navy pilots described tic-tac-shaped objects, smooth, white, no visible propulsion, moving in ways that defy known aircraft. Was this man-made or something else entirely? And remember, this didn't start as random hacking. It began with Donahare's claim that images were being altered before public release. What Gary believed he saw, even briefly, was raw data that didn't match the cleaned versions. If that's true, then the question shifts. It's not just whether UFOs exist, but whether evidence has been filtered out in silence. At that point, this wasn't just about one image anymore. It was starting to look like a system. What was it he saw on those files? Spreadsheet of a shadow navy. The file didn't the cigar that bedazzled him. The file started loading slowly, line by line, like the image didn't even want to reveal itself all at once. Inside NASA systems, Gary McKinnon had already moved past the obvious stuff. The logs, the directory. It looked special at first, just a normal Excel sheet sitting quietly among everything else. But the moment Gary McKinnon opened it, the details started stacking up in a way that didn't feel normal anymore. According to his 2026 interview with Cybernews and his earlier statements referenced in the American Alchemy podcast, the spreadsheet had multiple tabs, each one organizing information like a proper system. There were columns for names, ranks, and assignments, the kind of structure you'd expect in any military database, but then it shifted. Other sections listed ships, supply transfers, and what he described as fleet-to-fleet transfers, which in simple terms means movement of materials from one ship to another. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. He said some of those ships were not linked to any known Earth-based navy. No familiar designations, no obvious country connections, just entries that suggested something operating outside the usual military structure. According to the same sources, this is where the idea of a hidden space program comes in, often referred to in fringe discussions as Solar Warden, though no official confirmation exists for such a program. And you can see why this stuck with him, because this wasn't a blurry image anymore, it was organized data, the kind that looks routine until you read it closely. The problem was that same slow dial-up connection made it almost impossible to download everything fully. According to reporting from the Express and his own retelling, the file was too large, and he couldn't capture all of it before losing access. At the same time, the US government was building a completely different picture. According to his Wikipedia case file, they were focusing on system damage, missing logs, and disruptions to military operations, especially around places like Perl Naval Weapons Station after. So you end up with two versions sitting side by side. One man claiming he found structured evidence of something operating beyond Earth, and a government claiming serious damage to critical systems. And somewhere between those two, the tension starts to tighten. Because if even part of what he saw was real, then this wasn't just a hack anymore. It was a discovery. And that's exactly where the story takes an even stranger turn. Because if this spreadsheet was real, then it wasn't just about ships or transfers. It was about organization on a level that implies long-term operations. You don't build structured databases like that for something experimental or temporary. That kind of system suggests continuity, oversight, and resources far beyond a single mission or department. It raises a question that's hard to ignore. Who was maintaining it? Because data like that needs constant updates, coordination, and personnel who understand exactly what they're working with. And if those entries truly didn't match any known naval registry, then whatever Gary saw wasn't just hidden. It was operating completely outside public reality. But discoveries like that don't stay quiet for long. And by the time Gary was still trying to make sense of those files, something else had already started moving against him. Hunted to the edge. The knock came in 2002, and just like that, the quiet search inside hidden systems turned into a real-world problem standing at the door. According to the BBC and his Wikipedia case timeline, Gary McKinnon was arrested by Scotland Yard and later charged by US authorities on multiple counts, facing a possible sentence that could have reached up to 70 years. That number alone changes everything, because what started as curiosity suddenly became a fight for survival. The years that followed were heavy. Court hearings stretched from 2002 all the way to 2012, with the United States pushing for extradition, which simply means sending him to another country to face trial. According to Security Week reports, prosecutors wanted him tried in America, while Gary argued that his actions were never meant to cause harm. During that time, he was placed on strict bail conditions, including no internet access from 2005, cutting him off from the very world that defined him. And it got darker than most people realize. According to court details cited in Wikipedia, he openly spoke about planning suicide using potassium chloride, which is a chemical that can stop the heart if misused, because he believed he wouldn't survive a US prison system. That fear wasn't abstract, it was immediate. Support started building around him, with public figures like Sting and members of Pink Floyd backing his case, even dedicating a song in support, which shows how far this story had spread. Then, on October 16, 2012, the decision came. Theresa May blocked the extradition, citing his Asperger's syndrome and the serious risk to his mental health. According to official government statements reported by the BBC, Asperger's is a condition that affects how a person processes social interaction and stress. He walked free in the UK and no charges were brought against him there due to legal and evidence issues. But even with that outcome, something doesn't sit right. Because if this was just a reckless hack, why push that hard for a decade? And why risk everything to bring him across the ocean? He was free, yes, but the pressure left marks, and the deeper question stayed behind, quietly waiting. Those systems were open when he found them, and no one has really explained why. Backdoors to the stars. Those systems were not broken into with advanced tools. They were already open, and that is the part that still bothers people years later. According to reporting from the NZ Herald, Gary McKinnon himself described NASA's security at the time as truly shocking, and when you look at how he got in, it starts to make sense. His simple script scanned thousands of machines, with some estimates in Cybernews reports suggesting over 5,000 systems were probed, and many of them had blank passwords or no protection at all, even in the period right after when security should have been at its highest. That raises a hard question. Were these just careless mistakes, or were some doors left open on purpose for internal access? Because when systems are that exposed, it is not just one person who can find them. Years later, NASA addressed growing UFO questions during a 2023 UAP panel, as reported by The Atlantic, stating they have found no evidence of extraterrestrial technology and no proof of a cover-up. A UAP simply means an unidentified object seen in the sky. But still, the tension remains. You have official denials on one side and a case where an ordinary system administrator walked through open doors and claimed to see something extraordinary on the other. If those doors existed then, you have to wonder what might still be slipping through today. A slow dial-up line, a cigar-shaped object, and a spreadsheet listing something that should not exist, all uncovered by Gary McKinnon, not a spy, just an ordinary guy. That is what makes this story stick. Was that fleet real or just misread data? And if governments know more, will we ever hear it?